If ABC Family can gaslight the world into thinking the Harry Potter movies are Christmas movies, I can do that for the 10th anniversary Dragon Ball special. Made to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the anime, Dragon Ball Path to Power retells the early arcs of the original Dragon Ball, as we're treated to a young Goku getting pulled into Bulma's own journey to find the titular Dragon Balls and grant her wish of giving her the perfect man. Women, am I right? Being released in March 1996, it premiered just weeks after Dragon Ball GT began airing. This is important. I remember back in the day seeing incorrect dum-dums on forums hate on this special, if only because it's so clearly made with the GT brand synergy in mind. It uses the same BGM, the character designs share that same style, it even ends on the GT opening playing instead of like an actual conclusive shot, which I always thought was kind of weird, but whatever. GT is one of those low-hanging fruit in the Dragon Ball community, where its mere mention has become conversational shorthand to express your disdain for it, and anything even remotely adjacent to it, when honestly the majority of complaints with GT come from the writing. Remove that from the equation and it's starting to look significantly better. Between the highly detailed backgrounds, designs that have the little face shines while still retaining that grit of the mid-90s hand-drawn cells, and a soundtrack that captures the complete emotional highs and lows of its cast and then some, GT is absolutely beautiful. From a technical standpoint, this is to say that Path to Power takes GT's strengths in its music and design and uses them to its advantage, serving as that perfect bridge to adapt those older stories with modern sensibilities. If anything, it's those modern 1996 sensibilities that really help further frame that original Dragon Ball as this very whimsical, timeless, fantastical tale, perfect for the winter months. The slow instrumental of Dan Dan that plays when Goku first meets Bulma, the drum slowly crescendoing into the title drop. The hasty threatening track that perfectly matches Yamcha and his Wolfang fist, only to droop into something more kooky once he freezes up in front of Bulma. The authoritative horns that blare when the Red Ribbon Army gets introduced. It all feels like elements of a fairy tale come to life, because at its core, that's what early Dragon Ball is. And yet it's that same fantasy and whimsy that serves as such a deterrent to so many Western Dragon Ball fans. For real, I find it disgusting that there are fans that grew up on the Z arcs of the series without ever having backtracked to the original. I swear, if I see any Daima viewers say they want more Chibi Goku without backtracking to Dragon Ball, I'm gonna have a conniption. They made 153 episodes, 3 movies, and 1 amazing special of exactly that. Don't say that Dragon Ball was your childhood, all while ignoring Goku's own childhood in the process.
For shame. For shame!
What Path to Power absolutely nails is being able to marry the adventurous spirit of the original with the more bombastic fights that the franchise becomes known for, making it palatable to the Z-only crowd while still being mindful of the ethos of those earlier arcs. It's why even though GT opens with Peel Off Mai and Shu, the 10th anniversary special doesn't use them in favor of the Red Ribbon Army instead. Their never-ending supply of tanks as well as gangly mechas not only expressing original creator Toriyama's sensibilities well, but also allowing for the more insane fight scenes by the special's end. You've got Black bouncing around in his mecha suit, shooting energy beams from his tummy, all while Android 8 zips around using... It's not quite his butt, but I can see how haters can say it's coming from his butt. I like this movie, why am I spotlighting this? Just lots of genuinely engaging fight choreo that supplements the fantasy element rather than feeling out of sync with it. And a lot of that is less from rewriting a DB story to fit into a post-DBZ world, and more a reframing of the pre-existing story. I don't want to say it's an adaptation since the word kinda has a stink on it now, but I mean, yeah, it's an adaptation. Moments like Goku fighting Yamcha or Roshi firing the Kamehameha as a flex both happens in the original, but knowing what we know now about the series, it takes special care to really highlight those fights as these ultra-stylized moments of gravitas. And this isn't to say that Path to Power is this brain-dead punchy punch Member Berries retelling either. There's actually a weird amount of silence and downtime throughout the special that I think further adds to its own winter coziness. Because the core story is a globe-trotting adventure, the story is allowed to get a bit loosey-goosey with its plot progression. As long as the cast is looking for a Dragon Ball, the item not the title, anything that happens leading up to that point can literally be anything. Each action set piece, bridged by slow moments that you wouldn't even think of, ends up elevated by its beautiful animation, backgrounds, and character work. Like, just look at this bit where Oolong is driving through this winding path and he's whistling to himself. Mega charming! Even when the Dragon Ball hunt gets derailed by the Red Ribbon kidnapping the heroes, the special takes the time to focus on Goku, who gets unknowingly separated from the rest of the cast, and we get this really eerie shot of him looking around by the shore. It emits that same feeling you get when you're a kid and you wake up after a nap in a place you don't remember falling asleep in. That dreamlike quality spilling over into your waking world and creating this disconnect that's unsettling all on its own. Goku, who is usually framed as this happy-go-lucky little ball of energy, can't help but hesitate and reassess his current world situation when even he realizes something's wrong. Please, someone help this lost child! By the time Funimation released this special to the Western market, it was 2003, a solid 7 years since its initial Japanese release. As a cultural barometer, this is the difference between the Billboard Hot 100 spot being One Sweet Day and In the Club. I think weebs kind of forget that we used to exist in a time where there was this severe a delay between Japanese and international releases, which in turn tints how we look back on those media. Suddenly the 10th anniversary special, which had contemporaries like Escaflowne, Sailor Stars, or Slayers, was being released at the same time as early 2000s titles like The Animatrix, Naruto, or FMA. The home release market in general at the time was always a mishmash of older and newer titles vying for the same shelf space, but it felt even more apparent with anime just because the turnover for some titles would just be so long. This isn't to say that Path to Power suffered because of its accidental Steve Rogersing into a more modern pop culture landscape. If anything, Funimation was fully aware of the cultural impact Dragon Ball as a whole had, and timed the release of the special as well as they could, releasing it a month after the final DBZ single disc and the first batch of King Piccolo episodes, and 2 weeks after they'd begin releasing GT. While it would feel more sensible to wait until all of the original series got dubbed and released as well, the King Piccolo arc does feel more in line with a comfy medium of fantasy action that Path to Power also pulls off. So I'd say this was as good a timing as they could get. And as someone that was the prime demographic for the series at that time, I did end up buying the King Piccolo discs and Path to Power at around the same time at my local Fry's. Heck, this is actually one of the few movies I own both on VHS and DVD because I like it that much. Admittedly, this was initially because I was turning into a vehement subs over dubs weeb, and the VHS release only had the English version, but also the more times I revisited the special, the more I noticed myself gravitating towards the dub than the sub version. Dragon Ball in relation to Funimation is one of those cursed pairings where like 90% of other anime Funny would put out had a decently accurate dub, but whenever Dragon Ball was involved, it would always take these harsh left turns into just say whatever you feel like territory.
See, when you take life, you live in fear because deep down you know that someday your life will be taken as well.
Even in cases where they wanted to work some retroactive know-how into the script, it would just fall on its face. But Path to Power, bless this movie, dude, because it is probably my favorite dub from any Dragon Ball project. Because it was made as a 10th anniversary project, I think Funimation knew they had to bring their A-game, because they treat this dub with such a very specific amount of care for characterizing everyone in the cast. I think what separates a serviceable dub from an amazing dub isn't as simple as a language or VA preference, but a thorough understanding of the character. By this point, the Dragon Ball property was a worldwide phenomenon, and even with some occasional lost in translation moments of mischaracterization with adult Goku, it was clear the Funny staff knew what Kid Goku was like. Watching this special dub makes it feel like a goddamn Don Bluth movie. Goku is characterized less like a Superman archetype like he is in the English dub of Z, and more in line with the original Japanese version. He's this innocent kid that grew up with his grandpa in the middle of the woods. Have you ever met someone raised by their grandparents? They're kinda weird. But at the same time, there's this added layer of tragedy as Goku's grandpa dies off screen and he's forced to fend for himself until Bulma shows up. It should be noted that the Ozaru plot point is never brought up in the movie. Very early on into the manga, we find out that Grandpa Gohan died because Goku transformed into a giant monkey and myrtleized him. I think removing this plot point was intentional on the scriptwriter's part because they wanted to maintain Goku's sense of innocence in his connection with his grandpa, and the English dub understands this completely. Stephanie Nadolny as Kid Goku delivers a very noticeable sense of little kid innocence that you don't quite see in her performance in the main show itself, in part because she's never really given the chance to show off that side of the character vocally. Even the dub script makes a point of further underlining this innocence. Exchanges with Bulma where Goku almost conveniently lies to himself about Gohan's death.
Grandpa's been in this ball he gave me ever since he had to go away.
Or moments where the script just allows him to exclaim like any kid would after a success.
I'm the toughest in the world!
Really adds to this side of Goku we almost never see highlighted in the main series itself. I firmly believe that if the special came out today, you'd see aging weebs call Kid Goku shit like a little cinnamon roll and the bestest little guy. Because the special itself does so much to characterize Goku as a kid first and a fighter second. Scenes like him rolling up little snowmen right before absolutely demolishing Muscle Tower does a good job of showing off this dichotomy. Even more subtle things like character acting really helps build Goku's innocence up. So when we finally reach the climax and Goku cries over the death of Android 8, we feel that. I have a feeling people look at this scene and argue that it's the special characterizing Goku more like Gohan was during the Cell games. There are definitely some parallels to draw between the two, but I think it's as simple as saying that a child, any child, is allowed to cry when they're sad. No toxic masculinity in this special. Of the cast in this special, Android 8 is the closest Goku has to a peer, and the dub is very conscious of this, as besides Goku, Ader is the only other character to be written as innocent and childlike. There's this part in the dub where General White is just tearing into Android 8 when he doesn't want to destroy Goku, and the whole time White's kicking him, Ader just mumbles to himself.
I'm sorry I wasted money.
Where most shonen use a peer character as a rival to eventually go up against, Path to Power paints Goku's and Ader's relationship as childlike as possible. There is no wanting to surpass your rival here because Ader makes it very clear to Goku that he doesn't like fighting.
Destroying a living being is cruelty. I don't want to do anything cruel.
Unlike the majority of the main series where Goku is the one that spares and later befriends his enemies, in Path to Power, Ader is the one that initially spares Goku's life. But this isn't seen as this moment of Ader having the moral high ground over Goku, and thus Goku has to reconsider his whole outlook on life. Ader sparing Goku is framed as this big moment less for any broader story scope and more because it is simply the right thing to do. And the special continues this childlike sense of morality time and time again. After knocking out General White, the two bond over a snowball fight, Goku officially naming him the more genial Ader over the colder Android number 8. Just as Ader granted Goku humanity in sparing his life, Goku does the same by treating him like a human worthy of friendship. Likewise, Bulma's own character arc, for one, it exists. It's so easy to brush off Bulma as a secondary character, but she gets just as much screen time as Goku. The entire series wouldn't exist unless she meets Goku, so I'm glad the special takes the time to underline her importance. At the start of Path to Power, Bulma is a self-centered bratty teenager. She's hunting the Dragon Balls to wish for a boyfriend, and only lets Goku tag along after seeing how useful he would be as a bodyguard. And the dub really makes a meal of her character, really digging into her selfishness, especially early on as she tries to convince Goku to surrender his Dragon Ball, which, reminder, is the only keepsake Goku has of his dead grandfather.
Now give me your grandpa so I can get my man!
Much like Ader's relationship with Goku, Bulma's relation with him is less a matter of give and take and more a matter of simply doing what is right. Bulma doesn't surrender her wish in the end because Goku's morals rubbed off on her. In fact, it's very clear that she gives up her wish because she thinks she found her perfect man in Yamcha. This in turn completes Yamcha's own character arc as he begins the special with an irrational fear of women.
Wolf! Fang! Oh my gosh, a girl!
This ensemble cast, all with their own character arcs that collapse perfectly into each other, further adding to the cozy fairy tale feeling. Even the supporting cast emits that very specific comedic relief in a Disney movie energy. Granted, they're a lot hornier than a standard Disney movie, but the energy is there regardless. Oolong, Puar, Turtle, Roshi, they all make for this quirky cast of characters that stand well on their own, but really breathe life into the movie when they're together. The scene where the Red Ribbon captures them and they actually have to fend on their own without Goku is something I wish the series did more often, where the non-fighters just have to figure out how to save the day and end up stepping on each other's toes the entire time. Puar getting on Oolong's case about not being able to transform into a key when they could just as easily transform themselves is some absolute vaudeville level humor. Somebody stop this absolute menace.
You really suck!
It's funny, it's endearing, it's Disney-esque. Like, if it wasn't for the obligatory anime gonna anime moments, this would be the perfect family movie. But also my family doesn't like anime, so more for me, I guess. Whenever people delve into water cooler discourse of what counts as a holiday movie, I was excited when I actually realized the 10th anniversary Dragon Ball special had exactly one snow scene to qualify it. But upon further inspection, it really does check all those boxes I would expect from any proper Christmas movie. It's cozy, adventurous, has a rom-com subplot, and an ensemble cast, all while assuming the best in humanity. Like, you don't have to be an absolute saint to have a basic understanding of right and wrong, and if the 10th anniversary movie has any semblance of a through line, it's that. You can be a brat teen, a bandit, a pig, pervert, or even a little kid that grew up in the middle of the woods, but when you see something is wrong, you just get that sense that it is, and hopefully you do what you can to fix it. Because there's far too much evil in this world, and every bit counts.